From a young age, Issei was considered practically perfect in everything that he did. Physically speaking, he was one of the elite. He was a natural leader. His only flaw? He was a jerk. Yeah, you see, he was extremely arrogant, causing for there to be a bit of a disconnect between him and his peers. He never had to struggle in anything that he did, not even academically speaking. Most thought that he was just going to be a physical specimen in terms of sports, but nothing else. They were proven wrong though when they found out that he was at the top of their class. Even teachers were actually surprised about this as well. It seemed that there was no way of actually humbling this boy. Students and teachers disliked Issei, but had to begrudgingly admit that he was probably a once-in-a-lifetime genius. They figured that he would end up becoming a political leader one day with his intelligence and influence around the campus. After all, he managed to convince half of the boys at his old school to literally bleach their hair blonde, all because he was a natural blonde. A couple teachers thought that he bleached his hair when first meeting his parents and realizing that they were both brunettes. This made them immediately think that he was going to turn out to be a delinquent of sorts, but they would be proven wrong when his birth records, they showed that he was a natural blonde apparently. This initially made them let go of their bias against Issei, because you can't really help genetics. That was, well, until he decided to make a joke one day about how he was able to stand out because of his blonde hair. He was so intelligent, he was so strong, so powerful in everything that he did, because the color of his hair was blonde. And because the male populace was that gullible, it turned out that a lot of them ended up bleaching their hair because of it. It only took like 1 week to convince half of the boys to actually bleach their hair, and for the school to be bombarded by angry calls from parents. And the worst part about it all was, Issei was aware. He was aware of their bias against them, and he decided to play them like a fiddle. He decided to play into this character that the school had basically put on him. The school had basically looked at him with. They couldn't even technically punish Issei either, since he never, forced any of them to bleach their hair either. All he did was, as far as all the context that was given, was, make a joke, suggesting that the students could become better if their hair was like his own. Despite his personality and actions, his academics and physical performance were what allowed him to make it into Cool Academy. He spent the first couple days observing the place and getting a feel for it, before allowing for his presence to really be felt by the whole school. During his days of observation, he would hear about this one other blonde at the school that went by the name Kiira, or Yuto Kiira. He was given a nickname by the girls at the school as well. This nickname was, of course, the Knight of Kowo Academy. Such a nickname intrigued Issei. It would suggest that they probably had some skill in fighting, preferably with a sword at the very least, and was a rather chivalrous character. He wanted to see how he fared against him in combat. It was mainly to establish his dominance in the school in an easy fashion, but to also see if he would actually have a challenge in this school for once. And all of his other schools, he was the top dog with little to no challenge whatsoever. Maybe this school, it would be a bit different. He wasn't sure. Issei would go asking around to meet with his Kiira guy until he eventually found him. He would bring up how he was new to this school and he wanted to, well, try out for the Kendo club. He heard that Kiira was pretty good with a sword, probably one of the best in the entire school. Issei wanted to know how well he fared against the very best and how far he had to go. Maybe Kiira could give him a pointer, a couple of tips on how to improve. Kiira would be hesitant, but he would eventually agree to it. He had time to spare today. They would meet at the Kendo Club's training spot and pick up 2 wooden katanas. They would both get into their own special stance before charging at one another. Well, it was really only Kiira charging. You see, Issei simply stood still before blocking multiple of Kiira's attacks while holding his sword with one hand. He didn't seem to be particularly trying all throughout the fight, annoying Kiira to the very end. Or to no end, I should say. He thought this was going to be an easy fight, but he hadn't made one attack that actually connected with Issei. Eventually, Issei just began to take an offensive stance, pushing Kiira back. This would even shock Kiira and everyone watching. How was this possible? It didn't even take that long before Kiira found his sword being flung out of his hands. Issei points his wooden blade at Kiira's throat, signaling the end of the spar, and everyone would begin to talk amongst one another at the display. This was unprecedented. News would spread like wildfire about Kiira's humiliating defeat. It would even get the attention of Ryusa's and Sona's peerages. A student defeated Kiira, a devil, in combat? Even if it was just a spy, this was unusual. They couldn't believe that this was just a regular student. No, there was something fishy about this. They had to be an affiliate of any of the 3 factions or even outside factions like the Greek Pantheon. An investigation was in order so that they could find out about this kid who could take down Ryusa's knight. Akino would be the one sent out in order to interrogate the boy a little. She tried to act friendly and play towards his personality, which seemed to be rather prideful. She would compliment him on his appearance and strength, even bringing up the fight with Kiira. She would question how he was able to defeat someone as strong as Kiira in Kendo. He was one of the best at their school after all. Issei would simply laugh and explain that he was a natural at everything he did, although he did train quite a bit as well to not fall into the same camp as those who solely relied on their talent and nothing else. Akino decided to accept this answer, realizing that it was more than likely Issei was just really that good. It didn't mean much though, since it was still a human sport, and Issei ended up defeating Kiira in. If it was a real fight, that would be a true cause for concern. But it was just Kendo. She didn't sense any form of particular energy coming off of him either that would hint towards him being more than just human. That was not the same for Issei though. He did notice something off about Akino. He felt something so strange, so foreign, but he couldn't place his fingers on what exactly it was. he decided not to pursue the answer to it for right now. Instead, he figured that it would be better if he just focused on achieving dominance in the school first. That was until he met another girl by the name of Yuma, and funnily enough, she had similar energy waves as Akano, but it was less distorted for some reason. He wasn't exactly sure why that was even a thing. What's up with this energy here? It was as if there was some form of divinity to her aura, but very diluted. She would explain that she was new here and she wanted help finding her classes. Issei seemed like he knew his way around here pretty well, so that's why she went to him. Issei would shrug and decide to take up the request. He wasn't a complete jerk after all. That, and it would give him some time to examine her a bit more. Eventually the girl even asked Issei on a date, which he accepted, much to the shock of the entire school. With a personality like his own, many of the guys questioned how he was even able to get along with any of the female populace. Many of the girls questioned why he chose to go on a date with her, of all people. All the comments would be ignored though. Issei was far more concerned with finding out more about this Yuma girl. The two of them would have a pretty nice day together. Issei would win a lot of prizes for the girl at the carnival they decided to go to for their date, and they would even go on a couple of roller coasters too. At the end of the date, they would simply be strolling in the park, enjoying the weather and looking at the beautiful full moon. Yuma would turn to Issei and ask him a question. Would you die for me? Yeah, that was the question that left Issei with a confused look on his face. That was until Yuma decided to reveal her true nature to him. Two black wings would pop out from behind her back, and her outfit would completely change as well. She would mock him, calling him naive and how this would be where he died. Rather than wetting his pants though, like she expected, Issei would show a far different response from what she was expecting. You see, a golden portal would open up from behind Issei with a golden spear coming through it into Issei's hand. Issei would call the girl a mongrel, practically like a dog, with how easy it was to toy with her emotions and make her genuinely think that she was the one in control of the whole situation. No. You see, he had been noticing a strange energy for a while now, and was wondering when she would reveal herself to him. Rainier wouldn't even be able to process all of this information, as her heart would have been destroyed before the spear was even thrown. For good measure, he launched the spear in her body to make sure that whatever magical properties she had wouldn't kick in to heal her or anything. After that, the spear would have been transported back to Issei's possession inside of that strange dimension of his. He would put his hands inside those pockets and leave the scene as if nothing happened. He wouldn't have even been aware of the turmoil between the three factions he had just caused. Sona would decide to investigate the corpse of Rainier in order to figure out the cause of her death. Rias had confirmed that her faction had nothing to do with the cause of Rainier's death after all. If neither she or Rias had anything to do with her death, that meant there was someone else within the three biblical factions that likely did it. Sona hoped the corpse would at least give her a hint. To her shock, it appeared that Rainier's heart was destroyed prior to the weapon even being used to attack her even entered her body. This seemed like the weight of a sacred gear, but she wasn't sure of which one. She began to look into all sorts of secret gears and abilities that people from any of the three factions had. Although she was able to find a couple, not one of them completely fit the description. Right when she was about to give up, one of her peerage members suggested that they start searching the school itself to find the culprit. When looking through the school populace, she came to a dead end multiple times. That was until she found Issei. From day one, the peerage had their eyes on Issei as he was rather peculiar. She was assigned to talk to him after the end of one of his classes, with her peerage members right outside the door if any issue were to occur. She didn't bother even trying to jump around the bush with her questioning here. Issei would be asked if he was the one who killed that fallen angel at the park, to which a smile would appear on his face as he began to give a description of the girl. It was a 1-to-1 comparison. He told her that he was the one to have killed her and even show her the weapon he used. The only reason he was so nonchalant about his answer though was the fact that it was his word against hers. She couldn't prove to anyone that he killed that fallen angel. Only a mongrel wouldn't be able to figure that out. Sona would be appalled at what Issei had just called her, but quickly tried to calm herself down. After all, her emotions mattered very little here. What mattered more was the fact that they needed to retain the stability of the peace between the three factions. The leaders were a bit tense about the situation as well after all. Issei would continue to gaslight Sona though, to the point that she would just decide to simply storm off. She couldn't take it anymore. She had had enough of Issei's unbearable attitude. She would inform Rias about her findings, and Rias would have her doubts though. A mere human like Issei managed to kill a fallen angel? That did not sound right. Sona would bring up how he was no mere human though. He appeared as if he had a form of space magic under his belt or something, with how he managed to open up a golden portal to pull out his spear. Rias would initially believe her friend had lost her marbles while under all this stress, until Kiira backed up Sona's side of the story. He would explain that while fighting Issei, he was practically feeling as if this was no longer him going up against a regular human. It felt as if he was fighting a transcendent being of some sort. They were able to easily block any and all of Kiira's attacks with little to no effort whatsoever, even when he decided to use some of his superior devil strength. For Issei to have the capabilities of killing a fallen angel, and with this new information being brought to Rias, it did not sound as far-fetched anymore. This was coming to be a more serious situation than Rias had once thought. With this in mind, all of a sudden Rias would think of an ingenious idea. Maybe it would be best if she tried to recruit him from now. Recruit him to be maybe her pawn or something along those lines. Maybe that could work. Maybe that could sell this whole situation out. Maybe this could calm everything. She would of course end up meeting with Issei after school. Well, she would send one of her subordinates to get Issei and bring him over to talk to her. And from there, they would discuss. Rias would initially request that, hey, maybe it would be interesting if you were to join my peerage. Issei would be a bit confused until Rias revealed that, hey, she was a devil. Everybody here in her peerage were devils. And Issei could easily become one as well if he decided to join her peerage, become her servant. Issei would be kind of interested in this whole proposition. He would explain that he didn't really have much else to do, nothing better to do really, and joining her side could be of some benefit to him. That is, well, maybe collecting his treasures. Maybe collecting his treasures would become a bit easier if he were to join her side for right now, but you make this very crucial detail be known from early on. He did not plan on fully joining her peerage. No. He wanted her to convert him into a devil, sure. But as far as joining her peerage, absolutely not. He was not going to be anybody's servant. He wanted to make that crystal clear that they were simply individuals that could benefit from each other. Once he was done with claiming what was rightfully his, he'll be leaving to do his own thing once again. Now sure, he would let her borrow his strength in the meantime, but that was it. Once he got his treasures, they would basically have this partnership be done with. Of course, Rias would loudly object to this, and Issei would simply shrug, saying that he would find his own way around this then. He didn't really care. Afterwards, Issei would simply walk away. Rias would of course be fuming, and she would try and get her hands on Issei to wipe his memory, but he would be too fast for her and the rest of the peerage. This would surprise Rias. He was way faster than she was expecting. The rumors were seemingly more and more true each time that she got to know a bit more about him. A couple of weeks would pass from there, and Issei would decide to have a bit of a chit chat with Akeno. He realized that Akeno was seemingly related to Rias in a way. She was part of Rias's peerage, and that must have meant that she was converted into a devil by Rias as well. Or maybe she was always a devil. He wasn't exactly sure, but he was going to figure this out one way or another. He would flirt with the girl a bit and manage to lead her into a false sense of security. And they had gotten to really know each other, and once she was at a most vulnerable state, he would simply call for one of his golden portals to appear. This golden portal would release what looked like a strange looking dagger. It was jagged in a way, and it was very colorful as well. The name of this weapon was Rule Breaker, as Issei would call it, and he would grab her hand. It looked as if he was about to kiss it, but no, he would actually stab her hand with this item, and this would be what would cause for her chest piece to actually pop out of her hand. This meant that she was no longer part of Rias's peerage. She had basically been taken away from Rias's peerage in a way. She was no longer Rias's queen, and even Rias could actually sense that. She could sense that something was off. He would use this chess piece to become a devil himself and out of Rias's control. Akeno, no longer being bound to Rias, would be distraught. But Akeno would also have become a trophy of sorts for Issei. Even without the queen piece, he chose to, basically make her his wife, in a sense. Which kind of weirded out Akeno, to be honest. She was just manipulated into a false sense of security by this guy. Her connection to Rias had been stripped from her just like that, and now he's proclaiming that she'll be his wife. Honestly, Issei was a very weird guy in Akeno's perspective. And she didn't know what was up with this guy. At times he could be so charming, and then you just have him spouting complete nonsense like this. What was wrong with this guy? Like, sure, he might have been a bit overbearing with this larger-than-life personality, but she never expected for things to even go this far. What even was Issei? There's no way that he could just be a mere human. Issei would sigh. He debated whether to kill her or use more forceful means when she started to make a big deal over things. When she would not accept his proposal or nothing along those lines, she actually kind of snapped at him, to be honest, and he didn't really know how to deal with this at first. He didn't even really want to kill her. Letting her go would just spread the news of his failure, though. And, well, he could not allow that to happen, obviously, because you see, Issei never fails. Instead, he would decide to trap her inside the Gate of Babylon for now. It was the safest option. It's not like anything could ever rot or be destroyed in there anyways, at least without his permission. Now, he wanted to deal with finding his way to the devil's origin spot. Once the Akano was out of the picture, that is. And he managed to collect this chess piece, this devil piece. It was pretty much just finding that spot, because he had a feeling that this was going to be where he would find most of his treasures. He believed it to be the underworld, but he didn't necessarily know how to get there. He decided to use the essence of this chess piece in order to actually find and pinpoint that certain location. Even if it was in another dimension, probably he could find it using that chess piece's energy, this energy of devils. And sure enough, he would be able to find the underworld that way. With him being technically a devil now, once he teleported to the underworld unannounced, no one would really bat an eye. As far as they were concerned, he was just another devil, until he began to observe some items and suck them up in his golden portals, stealing them. Some would immediately try to stop him, but Issei, in response, would just shoot weapons from out of his gates. He would manage to get the attention of the higher-ups at this point. With Issei causing such a ruckus, of course he would honestly get the attention of people like Seraphal and all of that. The fact that Issei was literally using his chains of heaven to even be doing such chaos was terrifying to many of the devils. At first, when they saw people like Seraphal, Leviathan pop into the picture, they thought that they were finally saved. But when you started to use it on her as well, alongside the other higher-ups, that's when they were concerned. Absolutely no way was this possible. He was literally burning the devil higher-ups alive. This now led many to believe that this might just be an angel of death coming to wreak havoc upon the devils, breaching the contract between the factions, and everyone would be losing it as they were questioning what was happening. Many people were coming to different conclusions. Many were jumping at different conclusions because of the fact that this was so unprecedented. This was practically like a second faction war beginning. They were so concerned because of all of this, and in the end, Sir Zek's silver tongue would manage to come to their rescue in the very end. You see, Sir Zex would go about it in a different approach. He would actually try to speak to Issei first rather than trying to simply attack. He would talk to the boy, ask him a couple of questions. Sir Zex would point out that Issei seemed like a well-mannered, understandable type of person. Surely he could listen to him for just a little bit. Maybe ease off on the other devils for a bit, just so that they could talk. Issei would not be too happy to do so, and Sirzex would easily be able to tell this as well from his facial expressions. So instead, Sirzex would simply say, "What is your purpose here? After all, surely it wasn't to just wreak havoc upon this place, right?" Issei would let it be known that he was here to collect his treasures, which would confuse Sirzex until Issei properly introduced himself. His name was Issei Hyodo, and he came here to collect his treasures, his sacred treasures. He would even pull out the true Longinus as Longinus or like Longinus. However you pronounce that word. Basically, he would pull out one of the most powerful sacred gears of all time, and he would explain that his vault automatically collected the world's treasures. And when seeing this sacred weapon, the true Longinus, this would immediately make Sir Zex's eyes widen since he recognized that weapon. The question now was, how did Issei obtain such a weapon? He didn't quite understand the Gate of Babylon, even after Issei explained it, since it sounded like a cheat code created by God himself before being killed in the Holy War. Honestly, he was terrified right now. Sirzex was terrified. Sirzex knew that he had to be very careful with how he handled the situation. So for right now, he didn't even bother trying to fight Issei over it. Instead, he would just let Issei go about his business for now, since he knew that he could not handle him. Afterwards, Issei would let the rest of the people go. Once Sirzex even offered Issei up some more jewels, some more precious jewels and money, some special favors and all of that. Maybe some of his scrolls for ancient magic as well. Basically anything to get on Issei's good side and to release his people as well. Once Sirzex finally managed to get Issei out of his underworld, or better yet I should say, once Issei finally left and Sirzex made sure of it, he would call for an emergency meeting between all the three factions in order to figure out what to do with this anomaly that was Issei. While that was going on, Issei would find a certain nail in his gate and he would laugh when he realized just what this was. This nail was called Alpheka Tyrant, or the Unparalleled Crown of the Abyss. This apparently allowed him to control pretty much anybody if he used certain keywords. Effectively just brainwashing. And he realized what he could do with this. He would walk through the treasure cove that was his Gate of Babylon, and he would meet with Akano, who was angered by his presence. Issei would show little worry though, and instead begin to comfort her before using the nail in order to, brainwash her. Afterwards, she would begin to line up with her attitude, and not too long later, she would begin to appear at school once again. And probably around 10 days later, you could say, once Issei was absolutely sure she had been completely altered to fit his agenda. He even made sure that when it came onto her personality, it was pretty much mostly intact. The only difference now is that she seemed to show little to no regard for Rias. There was literally no difference besides that. Well, that and the way she treated Issei. She seemed to be very affectionate towards Issei while being very cold to Rias. Or not even really cold, to be honest, just not acknowledging her existence as if she just did not know her. This honestly greatly annoyed Rias to no end. She understood that Issei was behind this, but she didn't know exactly how he did it, or how to even reverse this. She would ask Sona to help her look into this. Considering all that happened, especially with how her sister was being burned alive by Issei earlier, and now she's hearing about the fact that, oh, apparently one of Rias's peerage members, her queen, or her former queen, apparently had been manipulated and turned into a practical housewife for Issei. Yeah, honestly, it was pretty obvious that Sona would get involved as soon as Rias brought it up that, oh, apparently Akino's been brainwashed and that she's been somehow forcefully removed from her peerage by Issei of all people. Yeah, no wonder they would look into it. And when it came on to what Akino was doing besides school, really, she wasn't even doing that much besides being a typical housewife for the most part. They did some spars here and there, but Akino was mainly confined to the house when it came onto things not relating to school. And of course, Issei would also move out during this time as well. He would decide to move in with Akino and completely revamp her place. And probably turning it into like a castle or something along those lines. When it came onto the factions now, they would be left scratching their heads and trying to figure out what to do with Issei. Because technically, he was not necessarily out to destroy anybody or the world or anything, no. He was just there to collect stuff. He was there to collect sacred gears for some reason. And it seemed as if some of them were already in his possession as well. The most they could do was try to recruit as many sacred gear users as possible. Even those who were unaware of their sacred gears, it was best to recruit them from now, rather than allow for Issei to get his hands on any more sacred gears and become even more powerful than he already was. He was already busting out abilities that they had never even seen before or heard of before. And now, he's collecting these sacred gears. He literally already has the most powerful one in his possession right now. And who knows how many more he has in his stash. Some would even point out that they literally can't just let Issei go about his business like this, mainly because of the fact that some people still have their sacred gears right now, and their sacred gears are literally attached to their souls. Those people would literally have to have the sacred gear yanked out of their spirits, their souls, that sort of thing, and that would literally kill them if that would have happened. But somebody else had come on to point out that all gears were accounted for, which confused the many people there at the meeting. When they realized this, they realized that, okay, maybe the best thing to do in this situation is to just closely monitor the boy for now. Try and find a weakness to exploit if he ever gets out of line, while keeping the quantity of deaths to a minimum. That was their literally only way of dealing with the situation without having any need for too much bloodshed. some of the people in the meeting would be rather annoyed. They wish that they could just go and deal with the situation right now, but they had to admit that there wasn't much that they could do. They literally have barely any information on Issei. They don't know what he's capable of, and he had already gone on a rampage in the underworld before. He managed to take down most of the higher ups. The only reason why X wasn't taken down as well was because of the fact that he decided to use his brain first. He decided to talk things out with Issei rather than try and get into what could possibly be a losing fight. While all of this was happening, while they were going through this big discussion with one another, Issei would just be having to deal with talking to Rias. Well, not even really talking to Rias, no. You see, it would be more so Rias yelling at Issei, demanding that he return Akeno back to her service, to which Issei would simply tell her that Akeno had permission to speak and act freely about the subject. Akeno would be right beside Issei during all of this, and Akeno would actually speak her mind here. She would go on a bit of a tirade here, gaslighting Rias until the redhead was in tears, and Issei would pet her hand afterwards, comforting Rias in a way, although it wasn't really that useful considering all that had happened, all that had transpired ever since Issei had arrived at the school. Rias hated Issei with an unwavering passion, you could say. It was basically like a fire that cannot be extinguished right now. That's how much she hated Issei. Issei wouldn't even really care, to be honest. All he really needed to do was just grab her hand. He would use this opportunity in order to stab Rias with the nail as well, and this would be what gave him the ability to brainwash Rias, turning her into another one of his wives. From there, he would take control over the whole of Rias's peerage. There would be no point in even trying to have a fight, at least for Kokobeel. You see, Kokobeel had been observing all of this as well, and he would have realized that Issei had been a catalyst for many things so far, and his desire to have another faction war, it seemed as if was going to be happening already. He didn't even have to really step in order to really push things forward. Issei was already doing it for him. With Issei not even having to worry about the likes of Kokobeel arriving at any point to mess up his parade, Issei would go on to take control over how Rias's peerage operated. One of the very first things that he would do is to simply get rid of her knight. That's right, he would get rid of Kiira simply because of the fact that he reminded him of a certain redhead. He couldn't necessarily remember the name of the boy, but all he remembered is that they were both very irritable. Kiira technically hadn't done him any wrong, but didn't want to deal with him. He had a very eerie feeling about Kiira for some reason. He didn't want to deal with that sort of thing, and for some reason he had a flashback to getting his arm removed, but this was not his memory. Or was it? He wasn't quite sure. All he knew was that he just shook his head and decided to just completely delete Kiira from existence. That was pretty much it when it came onto Kiira. When it came onto Alexa Konako, on the other hand, he would treat her with kindness. He would pet her head and treat her as if she was a pet of sorts. This would end up having her trust in Issei increased by leaps and bounds. That and the fact that apparently her master, Rias, apparently trusted Issei a lot for some reason now. Also, yeah, Issei did end up using the nail on her as well. Yeah, he ended up brainwashing Konako at the very end, obviously.
You see, he would make sure that everybody was accounted for, and when Rias brought up that there was one more member, his name being Gasper, he would call for her and have. I said her. He would call for Gasper to be brought in, and Gasper would also be brainwashed to be by Issei's side. Different factions would get involved in trying to figure out what's the whole thing with Issei, especially when finding out that he managed to take control of Rias's peerage. This was turning out to be more and more strange by the day. What was up with Issei? Many people were trying to figure it out, but they couldn't come up with pretty much anything. This guy was a whole anomaly. The fact that other factions could not figure him out as well was of great concern to many of them. He just does not fit any of their descriptions. He was a completely different type of being. And, well, some of them, like the Norse faction or mythology, you could say, they would also think that Issei was practically like a sign of Ragnarok coming. That honestly frightened many of them, because that would mean that this would be the death of Odin upcoming as well. If Ragnarok were truly to arrive soon, then they didn't know what was going to happen. Was Issei really a sign of the end? Obviously, Loki, for example, would be overjoyed by this. The fact that the end of time was starting to come, and this was basically their time. This was his time to shine. No, this wasn't how it's supposed to go. Not that you thought about it. He was supposed to be the catalyst for Ragnarok. Not Issei, but honestly, Issei kind of scared him. He didn't know how to deal with the situation properly. He would decide to just take a back seat and try and come up with a plan to deal with Issei, but nothing seemed to work. Every time he tried to come up with a plan, Issei would bust out a move that just seemingly destroyed the whole entirety of that plan. It seemed as if this man had every trick in the book figured out. This was absurd to the likes of Loki. He was the god of tricks. This was the trickster god. This man was meant to figure out everything, and then you just have the likes of Issei popping in. The fact that Odin was also trying to come up with different theories, but he couldn't figure out how to do it Issei either. That completely left the Norse mythology in shambles. Many factions were trying to get together in order to make a sort of truce between each other, because they felt as if the next faction war was going to be all the factions against one man. They needed as many people on their side as possible. Eventually, Kuraka, quote-unquote sister, would come around in order to, take her little sister back from Rias, but obviously she would not be aware of the fact that Issei was the one who had control over her now. Or she was somewhat aware, but she had no idea how capable Issei really was. She thought that he was just a bluff, you could say. She thought that the stories about him were just made up or overzealous, overblown. I don't think I used that other word properly, but you get what I'm trying to say. But obviously, Issei would make quick work of her. The Chaos Brigade honestly would not be able to compete here. They literally had nothing in order to deal with Issei. Even the likes of Valley, he could not compete with Issei. He tried. No, he didn't. Who am I kidding? He would just observe, and he would realize that Issei was far more powerful than he was, to the point where divine dividing would not be able to be enough to deal with Issei. The Sun Wukong lineage would try to fight Issei, or like at least try and put up a good fight against Issei, I should say, but obviously he would mess around and get killed. And this was basically a deterrent to basically anybody else that dare try and mess with Issei. He would literally have this boy on a pole. He would use him as a flag, for crying out loud, in order to demonstrate the power of the Gate of Babylon, to show that he was not one to be messed with. He was their god in a sense. The factions would be terrified by Issei's display of power. They wouldn't know what to do. They were really considering if they wanted to risk it all. They were super hesitant in this moment, but it was as if somebody had come back. It was as if God himself was still there with them, because a messenger was brought, somebody who could probably defeat Issei, and that was Ophis. Ophis would appear out of nowhere and approach Issei. The many factions would be extremely cautious while spying on Issei, seeing this interaction between him and Ophis, I should say. And Issei would not attack her simply because of the fact that he recognized that Ophis seemed to be just a curious child. Although he could tell that she was not a child, she was far older, thousands at the very least years older than him. But instead of calling him Issei like everyone else had grown accustomed to calling him by, she would call him by a different name, a name of the past, a name that he had not heard in so many years: Gilgamesh. Issei would be surprised and become intrigued. Ophis would explain who they were and that they had a bit of history together. That, and he kinda owed her a favor too, which caused Issei to raise an eyebrow. Yeah, he recognized the name Ophis. He was able to recognize her appearance. Well, not really the appearance, more so the eyes. Those dull, almost lifeless-like eyes, but at the same time very curious at the world as well. Those were the eyes that he recognized from Ophis. And then she would explain that, well, she was the reason for why he was even reincarnated in the first place. After hearing this, Issei would find himself fighting and beheading the Great Red, bringing it back as a trophy of his strength, and everyone who had been watching, spying on Issei for this long, all the factions that had been watching his every move since the day he had arrived in the underworld, they would have been completely mortified. Safe to say, Ophis would have gone back to eternal silence, and everyone would view Issei as a no-go to mess with. If they could literally take down the Great Red, then that meant that he was far too powerful for any of them to face alone. Even if working in groups, they weren't even sure if they could defeat him. Even as all of them going up against him, they still weren't sure if they could truly defeat him as an army, because Issei was an army in and of himself.
And that is how I end. What if Issei was Gilgamesh's reincarnation? The most I can probably add after this is that, hey, Issei goes on to basically conquer the rest of the domains. There's literally nobody else that could compete with Issei at this point. When it came onto the likes of Ophis, they would eventually grow bored of their eternal peace that they were in, and they would decide to move in with Issei, finding him to be of entertainment to them for this while. And they would even be granted access to the Gate of Babylon. They would be given the physical key to it, considering the fact that, hey, Opus was literally the reason why Issei had even managed to get this far in the first place. The fact that he had been reincarnated into this new body with several more opportunities than the last time. But yeah, that's about it for right now, y'all. As you guys can probably figure out, shout out to Neptune. I'm going to be leaving the link to the Wattpad in the description because they are a great writer. If you guys want to help them out with any stories that they're making, you can probably hit them up one day. Maybe y'all can link up, I guess. And they also helped me like plan out the story as well. But yeah, I really don't have that much else to say besides if y'all like the video, maybe leave a like. If y'all managed to reach this far, maybe subscribe. Leave a comment, a share to some people that might like this type of content as well. To help the algorithm. And yeah, that's basically all I gotta really say, people. It is your boy King Next signing out. Peace. Oh, and I forgot one more thing. Shout out to EMMET as well for making the thumbnail for this video. As I was editing this just now, I realized I literally forgotten to shout him out. I plan on leaving a link to his Discord in the description as well. So if you guys want to talk to him and maybe request like thumbnails in exchange for stuff or whatever, yeah, just hit him up using Discord. That's his main place of interaction. But yeah, that's about it, y'all. Peace.
Rifty.